"Then tell wind and fire where to stop," returned Madame, "but do not tell me." Both her hearers derived a horrible enjoyment from the deadly nature of her wrath. The listener could feel how white she was, without seeing her, and both highly commanded it. Defarge, a weak minority, interposed a few words for the memory of the compassionate wife of the Marquis, but only elicited from his own wife a repetition of her last reply. "Tell the wind and the fire where to stop, not me." Customers entered, and the group was broken. The English customer paid for what he had, perplexedly counted his change, and asked, as a stranger, to be directed towards the National Palace. Madame Defarge took him to the door, and put her arm on his, in pointing out the road. The English customer was not without his reflections then, that it might be a good deed to seize that arm, lift it, and strike under it sharp and deep. So here he contemplates very shortly killing Madame Defarge and just ridding the earth of her pestilence. But he doesn't. He has made it so that they believe that he didn't hear anything, or at least didn't understand anything that they said, because he acted like he didn't know French. So he goes out knowing that Madame Defarge not only wants Darnay dead, but she wants little Lucy dead, possibly Lucy dead, possibly Dr. Manette dead. And so he goes out knowing this new information, that it's not just Charles Darnay who's in danger, but his entire family. But he went his way, and was soon swallowed up in the shadow of the prison wall. At the appointed hour he emerged from it to present himself to Mr. Lorry's room again, where he found the old gentleman walking to and fro in restless anxiety. He said he had been with Lucy until just now, and had only left her for a few minutes, to come and keep his appointment. Her father had not been seen, since he quitted the banking house towards 4 o'clock. She had some faint hopes that his mediation might save Charles, but they were very slight. He had been more than 5 hours gone. Where could he be? Mr. Lorry waited until 10, but Dr. Manette not returning, and he being unwilling to leave Lucy any longer, it was arranged that he should go back to her, and come to the banking house again at midnight. In the meanwhile, Carton would wait alone by the fire for the doctor. He waited and waited, and the clock struck 12, but Dr. Manette did not come back. Mr. Lorry returned, and found no tidings of him, and brought none. Where could he be? They were discussing this question, and were almost building up some weak structure of hope on his prolonged absence, when they heard him on the stairs. The instant he entered the room, it was plain that all was lost. So here Dr. Manette has spent the last 24 hours trying to use his influence to save Charles once again. And they can see as soon as he walks in, the look on his face says, yeah, he didn't make it. Charles is going to die. Whether he had really been to anyone, or whether he had been all that time traversing the streets, was never known. As he stood staring at them, they asked him no questions, for his face told them everything. "I cannot find it," said he, "and I must have it. Where is it?" His head and throat were bare, and as he spoke, with a helpless look straying all around, he took his coat off and let it drop. "Where is my bench? I have been looking everywhere for my bench, and I can't find it. What have they done with my work? Time presses. I must finish those shoes." So here we see that Dr. Manette, unable to save his son-in-law, reverts back to the shoemaker. It's almost as if Darnay's imprisonment and imminent execution is the same thing for Dr. Manette. He's experiencing these same things. They looked at one another, and their hearts died within. "Come, come," said he, in a whimpering, miserable way. "Let me get to work. Give me my work." Receiving no answer, he tore his hair, and beat his feet upon the ground like a distracted child. "Don't torture a poor forlorn wretch," he implored, with a dreadful cry, "but give me my work. What is to become of us if those shoes are not done to-night?" Lost, utterly lost. It was so clearly beyond hope to reason with him, or to try to restore him, that, as if by agreement, they each put a hand upon his shoulder, and soothed him to sit down before the fire, with a promise that he should have his work presently. He sank into the chair, and brooded over the embers, and shed tears, as if all that had happened since the garret time was a momentary fancy or a dream. Mr. Lorry saw him shrink into the exact figure that Defarge had had in his keeping. Affected and impressed with the terror as they both were by the spectacle of ruin, it was not a time to yield to such emotions. His lonely daughter, bereft of her final hope and alliance, appealed to them both too strongly. Again, as if by agreement, they looked at one another with one meaning on their faces. Carton was the first to speak. "The last chance is gone. It was not much. Yes, he had better be taken to her. But before you go, will you for a moment steadily attend to me? Do not ask me why I make the stipulations I am going to make, and exact the promise I am going to exact. I have a reason, a good one." "I do not doubt it," answered Mr. Lorry. "Say on." Okay, so before we get to this part, I want to remind you, Sidney Carton said before this started, when the handed cards chapter, he comes up with a plan, and we have no idea what that plan is at this point. And he says, look, Dr. Manette's going to work for the best case scenario. I'm going to work for the worst case scenario, meaning Charles Darnay is sentenced to die and is not savable. So here he starts. Right now we know there's no saving Charles. He's going to die. So Carton has to put his plan into action, but he doesn't want to let Mr. Lorry know exactly what it is. He just needs Mr. Lorry to do certain things for the plan to work. The figure in the chair between them was all the time monotonously rocking itself to and fro and moaning. They spoke in such a tone as they would have used if they had been watching by a sick bed in the night. Carton stooped to pick up the coat, which lay almost entangled his feet. As he did so, a small case in which the doctor was accustomed to carry the list of this day's duty fell lightly on the floor. Carton took it up, and there was a folded paper in it. "We should look at this," he said. Mr. Lorry nodded his consent. He opened it and exclaimed, "Thank God!" "What is it?" asked Mr. Lorry eagerly. "A moment, let me speak of it in its place first." He put his hand in his coat and took another paper from it. "That is the certificate which enables me to pass out of this city. Look at it. You see, Sidney Carton, an Englishman." Mr. Lorry held it open in his hand, gazing in his earnest face. So the certificate's basically like a passport. So think of it, whenever you see that word certificate, think passport. It lets you out of Paris. It lets you out of France. Mr. Lorry held it open in his hand, gazing in its earnest face. "Keep it for me until tomorrow. I shall see him tomorrow," him being Charles Darnay, you remember, "and I had better not take it into the prison." "Why not?" "I don't know. I prefer not to do so. Now take this paper that Dr. Manette has carried about him. It is a similar certificate, enabling him and his daughter and her child at any time to pass the barrier and the frontier, you see." So Dr. Manette has gotten himself, Lucy, and little Lucy a passport as well to get out as soon as they want to. Yes. Perhaps he obtained it as his last and utmost precaution against evil yesterday. When is it dated? But no matter. Don't stay to look. Put it up carefully with mine and your own. Now observe. I never doubted until within this hour or two that he had or could have such a paper. It is good until recalled, but it may soon be recalled, and I have reason to think will be. They are not in danger. They are in great danger. They are in danger of denunciation by Madame Defarge. I know it from her own lips. I have overheard words of that woman's tonight which have presented their danger to me in strong colors. I have lost no time, and since then I have seen the spy. He confirms me. He knows that a wood sawyer living by the prison wall is under the control of the Defarges, and has been rehearsed by Madame Defarge as to having seen her. He never mentioned Lucy's name. Making signs and signals to prisoners. It is easy to foresee that the pretense will be the common one, a prison plot, and that it will involve her life and perhaps her child's, and perhaps her father's, for both have been seen with her at the place. Don't look so horrified. You will save them all. So here they still have safe passage outside of France, but Carton now knows that that may be recalled pretty quickly because he overheard the discussion between the Defarges. Heaven grant I may, Carton, but how? I'm going to tell you how. It will depend on you, and it could depend on no better man. This new denunciation will certainly not take place until after tomorrow, probably not until 2 or 3 days afterwards, more probably a week afterwards. You know it is a capital crime to mourn for or sympathize with the victim of the guillotine. So now it is illegal. You will be killed if you are sad that your husband, your father, your mother, your child, anyone who is killed by the guillotine, simply crying because they died is now a reason to be put to death. And obviously, Lucy and little Lucy and Dr. Manette are going to mourn the loss of Charles Darnay. Picking up with she and her father would unquestionably be guilty of that crime. And this woman, the inveteracy of whose pursuit cannot be described, would wait to add that strength to her case and make herself doubly sure. You follow me? So attentively and with so much confidence in what you say that for the moment I lose sight, touching the back of the doctor's chair, even of this distress.